Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tracing an absolutely wild 20-year journey. We're talking about the straight line that connects a fragile two-seat electric sports car built way back in 2008 all the way to a walking, AI-powered humanoid robot slated for 2026. Seriously, this isn't just a story of a company constantly pivoting or throwing things at the wall. It's actually the execution of one kind of eerie, continuous strategy.
So, you gotta ask yourself, how exactly does an EV startup literally hacking together cylindrical laptop batteries evolve into a juggernaut building humanoid robots, right? On the surface, it feels like three completely disjointed companies that just happen to share a name. It sounds like straight-up science fiction. But the key to grasping this whole 20-year trajectory, it's actually been hiding in plain sight this entire time.
The answer lies in the 2006 Secret Master Plan. This was a blog post that most of the world completely ignored at the time. The premise was surprisingly simple, though. It was basically build a high-margin sports car, use that money to build an affordable car, and then use that money to build an even more affordable car. And, oh yeah, while doing all that, provide zero-emission electric power generation options. Now, the robots aren't explicitly written in this little decoder ring, but the engine that produced them, it's absolutely right here.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the Secret Master Plan. Because writing a visionary blog post is one thing, but executing a complete disruption of a century-old industry is another thing entirely. We really need to break down the specific mechanics of how this ambitious blueprint actually worked in practice over the last 2 decades.
Think of this strategy like a giant funnel. You start narrow and really expensive at the top with the Roadster, and you widen out at the bottom with the high-volume, mass-market Model 3 and Model Y. Every single expensive, early premium product, like the Model S and X, was deliberately designed to fund and teach the manufacturing of the next, cheaper rung on the ladder. Basically, buyers of those early, pricey cars were essentially financing the R&D required to ultimately democratize the technology for everyone else down the line.
And this strategy forced a totally new architecture. Legacy automakers were top to bottom organized around internal combustion engines. For a long time, they just treated early EVs as mere compliance vehicles, patched together with federated software. But this new approach, it started entirely from scratch. They built a dedicated skateboard battery platform. By pioneering unified over-the-air software updates, a car could literally get better overnight. They pushed for extreme vertical integration. They didn't just change the car, they fundamentally changed the entire concept of car ownership.
But, as you can imagine, having a visionary blueprint doesn't magically save you from the brutal physics of building physical hardware at scale. Which brings us to Section 2, surviving production hell. This was a true crucible of manufacturing that almost ended the whole story.
Looking back at the chronological agony of the 2010s, we kind of have to hold two thoughts at once here. On one hand, there are these undeniable visionary triumphs, right? Like in 2012, the Model S fundamentally proved electric cars could actually be superior to gas-powered ones. But you have to juxtapose that against sheer hubris. By 2015, the Model X was critically delayed because it was just packed with excessive complexity. Remember those famous Falcon wing doors? Total manufacturing nightmare. And that hubris bled right into the 2017 Model 3 production hell, where extreme over-automation pushed the company right back to the brink of total collapse.
Now, survival wasn't just about grit, it was also very much about capital. Back in 2010, the company received a massive $465 million loan from the Department of Energy. And it's important we look at this impartially. Public policy and government support critically saved them during a deeply vulnerable period when traditional financing was completely scarce. But at the very same time, the company successfully used that money to fund their factory and the Model S program, and they repaid the debt fully, with interest, years ahead of schedule.
So once they survived that absolute gauntlet and actually began making real money on high-volume cars, they transitioned from a vulnerable startup into a massive platform company. Let's look at Section 3, building the foremosts, and see exactly how they went about forging these massive structural advantages.
These 4 interlocking moats are really what made them unassailable. First up, the product itself. It was built on an entirely updatable architecture where features are just pushed seamlessly to the car. Second, manufacturing. We're talking scaling global gigafactories obsessed with perfecting what they call the machine that builds the machine. Third, the network and energy infrastructure. They built a proprietary supercharger network so vast and so reliable that competitors eventually just surrendered and asked to plug in. And fourth, software and data. This is huge. They turned every single car sold into an active sensor, gathering literally billions of miles of real-world training data.
And while the cars consistently grab all the headlines, the energy moat is often completely ignored. Remember how that 2006 master plan explicitly mentioned zero-emission power? Well, the exact same battery chemistry and manufacturing expertise used to solve transportation is simultaneously deployed in massive megapacks. These are basically container-sized batteries working globally to stabilize power grids and store intermittent renewable energy, like solar. So this isn't just an auto company we're looking at. It's a deeply integrated energy and transport ecosystem.
Deploying all these powerful moats triggered a massive financial revaluation. The stock just went vertical, pushing the company to a staggering $1 trillion valuation. But here is the secret. The market wasn't just pricing them as a car maker anymore. No way. That valuation turned their stock into a capital-raising machine based entirely on the promise of the next step. The market was heavily betting on a future dominated by AI, software, and total autonomy.
And that astronomical valuation perfectly sets the stage for Section 4, the compute and data war. Because, as it turns out, the vehicles the company had been selling for years were actually Trojan horses. They were quietly designed to gather the massive amounts of training data needed for the ultimate prize, artificial intelligence.
Here we see a massive clash of philosophies. Impartially speaking, legacy autonomy efforts prioritized mapped, geofenced areas using highly expensive LiDAR sensors, which provide safe, highly bounded reliability. But this company, they placed a polarizing bet on the exact opposite. They decided to use mass-market fleet data to train vision-only neural networks. Basically, they aim for a go-anywhere system that can drive using just cameras, processing the world much like a human actually does.
But, as you can guess, processing all that incoming video data requires almost unimaginable computing power. Enter Project Dojo. It was a massive, resource-heavy attempt to build a custom AI supercomputer right from the silicon up. However, the source notes that their famous instinct for vertical integration hit very real limits here. Building custom AI silicon is brutally hard. And by 2025, they faced an expensive, strategic retreat, basically realizing that competing directly with established silicon giants might not actually be the most efficient path forward.
So what happens when you combine vast amounts of fleet data, highly advanced neural networks, and massive manufacturing scale? Well, you reach Section 5, from cars to robots. This right here is the climax of that latter strategy, applying absolutely everything they've learned into completely new autonomous form factors.
After years of missed deadlines and massive speculation, June 2025 marked a historic leap. They launched a limited autonomous Robotaxi service in Austin, Texas, carrying real passengers without a driver. Now, it is vital to view this honestly. It is a genuine, monumental milestone for their vision-only approach, for sure. But it was also launched as a geofence service, so still very far from the unbounded universal scale that their trillion-dollar valuation ultimately assumes.
But think about it. If you can build an autonomous robot on wheels, you can build one on legs. Enter Optimus. It is crucial we redefine Optimus not as some far-fetched sci-fi side project, but as the inevitable physical byproduct of this entire two-decade journey. They literally took the self-driving car's brain, its real-world AI perception, and repackaged it into a general-purpose humanoid body. And they utilized the exact same custom silicon, battery, and motor expertise forged inside their Gigafactories to do it. Which leaves us with this final provocation. As we look back at this incredible transition from that 2008 Roadster to the 2026 humanoid robot, we really have to ask, will this unified strategy permanently reshape physical labor and usher in an age of autonomous abundance? Or will it simply echo a long history of wildly ambitious yet continuously delayed promises? That gap between what is announced and what is actually delivered, well, that's the space you need to watch. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.